Okay, I promised you I was going to talk to you about another issue. And it is, how do we bring manufacturing jobs back to America? Does that interest you? Well, part of it is government policy and part of it is industrial policy. I'll do the industrial policy first, then I'll get to the government policy and taxes. I mentioned earlier that our businesses pay nearly the highest taxes in the world, except for Japan. We pay 35%. And every bit of business tax we put on them, they simply pass through to the consumer. It is a ridiculous tax any way you slice it. But the fact is, the international level is about 25%. In some countries, it's lower. That has driven many of our companies overseas to do their manufacturing. When you have a loss of 2.9 million jobs in 10 years, that is enormous. And that's a low estimate. Moreover, the job flight could increase. We've got a couple of issues on our plate that we didn't have 3 years ago, correct? We have the unknown costs of the so-called affordable health care bill, Obamacare. No one knows what it's going to cost. We know there's going to be 119 agencies all demanding data. And so when Steve King was very vehement on that subject, we believe that President Obama should be persuaded to eliminate Obamacare. Why? He said when he proposed it that it would cause no increase in the budget. Do you remember that? We now know it will cost $70 billion a year. Let's give the gentleman the benefit of the doubt. The Congressional Budget Office didn't say that initially, but they do say it now. So we say, well, President Obama, they didn't do their job well. It's $70 billion a cost. We think you ought to voluntarily repeal it since it doesn't meet your standards, correct? There's also the unknown cost of the Environmental Protection Agency inflicting the global warming carbon tax. We don't know what it's going to cost. The energy industry is scared to death. And yet, still, our unemployment is hovering above 9%. Given all these things American industry is still coming through, Motorola is one of the companies that began Six Sigma, and they had a computer board manufacturing operation that was losing money. These are big computer boards for industrial controllers, et cetera. Revenue was about $160 million a year. They were losing $10 million a year. So they moved to the division of China. And what happened in China? It continued losing money. 1,500 people were laid off in Phoenix. They still lost money over there. So they hired a gentleman from Intel who was a retired manager, and they said, we'd like you to either sell or shut down this division. But he asked, look, could I move it back to America and try to fix it first? And people said, well, it's your neck if it doesn't work. Isn't that always an interesting response to trying to fix a problem? Okay. Well, he said, I'll take that risk. Let me bring it back and try to fix it. He did apply Lean Six Sigma. He reduced the product portfolio dramatically. He found out they built 3,000 different part numbers of things for customers. Only 400 of them really made money. So he had a going out of sale business on the ones that weren't making money and concentrated and focused all the resources on really satisfying customers on the 400 that really were making money. Look at some of the data. Customer satisfaction increased from 27% to 88%. What do you think that does to customers wanting to place orders? They want to place orders with somebody they like, right? Somebody that's doing the job, someone that delivers on time. And indeed, his delivery went from 70% on time to over 90%. Repair delivery time. You send something in to be repaired, if it takes 55 days, you're not happy. It's nearly 2 months. They reduced that to 12 days. Those good things, those virtuous cycles of improvement, faster delivery, more customer satisfaction, increased the revenue of this division from $160 million to $550 million per year in just 3 years. That brought back more than the 1,500 jobs back to America. And the profit increased from minus $10 million where it was to plus $50 million. That's win-win for everyone, isn't it? So, it's a win for the shareholders, it's a win for Motorola, and it's a win for the employees. who now have steady jobs. By the way, these are well-paying jobs too. Now, I want to show you the comments of the manager. And these will really blow you away. He doesn't work for Motorola anymore, so he's a little more free to say things. But he said, none of these good things could have happened if we'd continued to leave our manufacturing operations in China. You can't reduce board delivery time from 55 days to 12 days if it's got to come across the Pacific Ocean, correct? If you're so far from the customers, when they have a problem, you have to go back to China to try to correct the problem and fix it and bring it back. No, the cycle times are too long, aren't they? He said, I've obviously been following the U.S. and global economic reports, and frankly, I'm shocked at how many U.S., United Kingdom, and European companies are moving their operations to China or India or Vietnam. Okay, the third world countries do offer lower labor costs. That is correct. We're never going to have our people make the same kind of money people in China do, correct? But, he says, this is the key thing, that low labor cost only works for making things like pencils and toys and low-tech products. So let's grant that point. Then he says, however, shifting higher technology products to be manufactured in the third world countries is, in my opinion, a big mistake for many U.S. companies. I could go on for hours. Why? But so be it. Aren't those words of wisdom for every American manufacturing company to listen to? So, now I want to talk about the policy issues that we propose that all presidential candidates consider. Both the Bipartisan Deficit Commission plan and the Ryan plan both agree on one issue for sure, and that is to reduce taxes on corporations to 25%. So there we have complete agreement. Dick Durbin, by the way, voted for that. Okay, we need to offer companies no taxes for 5 years if they will move their divisions back from overseas. By the way, the Treasury Department actually wins on that deal. Does anybody know why? 70% of all taxes are paid by personal income. If you put the 1,500 people back to work, paying taxes instead of being on welfare or unemployment insurance, they're paying taxes. And so, yes, you may lose the 35% of the company, but you get the 70% of the people. Personal income tax is vastly more important, so we want to put people back to work. That will help our deficit a lot. Not that I don't want to cut spending. Is anybody here a small business owner? Is anybody here with a small business owner that's having trouble getting a loan from the bank? Gee, the same number of hands went up. Well, my view is we should cut the small business taxes. Small businesses below 500 employees. Cut it to 12%. Cut it in half so that they can keep more of their money. Instead of 35% of their profits going back to the Treasury, then them having to go hat in hand to a bank that doesn't want to do business with them anyway, let them keep the money in the business. Now, if certain politicians are worried that you're going to buy yachts, you don't look like yacht-type people, but we know you're not going to buy a yacht. What do you do with that money? You reinvest it in the business. So would you mind it if we made a statute that any money you saved on taxes had to be retained in the business for 3 years? You're going to do it anyway. That way they don't have to worry about you buying a 3-martini lunch. Oh, excuse me, that was Kennedy. Or a yacht. And how many people here have started a new business from scratch? Maybe out of your home? Good. It's tough, isn't it? 70% of new businesses fail by the 3rd year. So I propose new businesses should pay no taxes for the first 5 years to get them through that critical incubator stage. I have had an economist from the House Energy Committee study this. He says actually small businesses during the first 5 years pay very little tax anyway. You know, but sometimes in a small business, it's like a new baby. Anything can cause them to go. So sometimes, I've started new businesses myself twice now, sometimes $5,000 can keep you alive to the next payroll, but if you've got to give that away in taxes, it won't work. So even small amounts of money are terribly important to new ventures. And 70% of all hiring is done by small businesses, and new businesses hire 3 times as much per revenue as even small businesses. So new businesses are very important. This policy will cut unemployment below 5% in 3 years. Why do I know that? Why do I know that? History. Who said history? Yeah, right. It worked for Clinton. It worked for Reagan. It worked for Kennedy. It worked for Harding. I don't need to go ask Larry Summers permission to do this one. In conclusion, all federal spending contains at least 25% waste which can be eliminated. Reducing waste by 25% will reduce total spending by $500 billion per year. We can reduce business taxes and bring manufacturing back to America. We can cut unemployment below 5% in 3 years.